Hello and welcome back to Understanding Depression. If this is your first time here, I'm really glad you've joined us. This podcast is a safe space where we explore the many layers of depression, not just what it looks like on the surface, but what's going on deep beneath it all. Today's episode is titled The Science Behind Depression, Neurotransmitters Explained. And if you've ever wondered things like what's happening in my brain when I feel depressed, or is depression just a chemical imbalance? This one's for you. Let me say this from the beginning. Depression is complex. It's not just about being sad, and it's definitely not just about being weak or dramatic. It's a real condition that involves real changes in the brain. One of the most important areas we need to understand is the role of neurotransmitters, those tiny chemical messengers that control how we think, feel, and behave. In this episode, we're going to walk through what neurotransmitters actually are, the three big ones linked to depression: serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, what happens in the brain during a depressive episode, why medication sometimes helps, and why brain chemistry is only one part of a much bigger picture. But before we dive into the science, I want to say something personal. If you've been struggling, whether it's with low moods, fatigue, hopelessness, or just feeling like something's off, you're not alone. And you're not imagining things. Your experience is valid, and there are biological reasons why you feel the way you do. Understanding those reasons doesn't take away your pain, but it can give you clarity. And sometimes, that clarity is the first step toward healing. So let's take a deep breath together, and let's begin. Let's start with the basics. What are neurotransmitters? Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers in the brain. They carry signals between nerve cells, or neurons, allowing different parts of the brain and body to communicate. When everything is working smoothly, these chemicals help regulate everything from mood and motivation to appetite and sleep. Imagine your brain as a huge city. The neurons are like buildings, and neurotransmitters are the messengers running between them, delivering instructions, responding to alarms, and keeping the whole system running. Without these messengers, the city doesn't know how to function properly. There are dozens of neurotransmitters in the human brain, but when it comes to depression, three of them tend to come up the most in research and treatment: serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These three don't work in isolation. They're part of a complex, interconnected system, but each has its own role to play. When they're in balance, we tend to feel emotionally stable, energized, and motivated. When they're not, we may feel low, anxious, or unable to enjoy things. Let's go over them one by one. First up, serotonin. Often called the mood stabilizer, serotonin is involved in regulating mood, sleep, appetite, and even pain. Many antidepressants, like SSRIs, are designed to increase serotonin levels in the brain. But is serotonin really the depression chemical? We'll talk more about that in a moment. Next, dopamine, the reward chemical. Dopamine is tied to motivation, pleasure, and reinforcement. It's what helps us feel good when we accomplish something or anticipate a reward. But it's also deeply affected by depression, especially the kind where people lose interest in things they used to love. And then there's norepinephrine, sometimes known as the stress responder. It plays a role in alertness, focus, and how our body responds to challenges. It's part of our fight or flight system, and when it's off balance, we may feel exhausted or restless, or both. These three are just the tip of the iceberg, but they give us a useful lens to understand the biological side of depression. Let's begin our deeper dive with serotonin, arguably the most famous neurotransmitter associated with depression. You've probably heard of it being called the feel-good chemical, but that phrase is a bit misleading. Serotonin isn't just about making you feel good. It actually helps regulate a whole range of bodily and emotional functions, like mood, sleep, appetite, digestion, memory, and even sexual function. It's more accurate to think of serotonin as a stabilizer. It helps keep things in balance. When serotonin levels are working well, we tend to feel emotionally steady. We sleep better, we feel calmer, and our appetite is more regulated. But when serotonin is disrupted or deficient, things can feel off, and not just emotionally. People with low serotonin levels may experience persistent sadness or emptiness, irritability, sleep disturbances, either too much or too little, appetite changes, anxiety, difficulty concentrating. This is one reason why SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are often prescribed for depression. They work by increasing the availability of serotonin in the brain. Think of serotonin like a message being passed from one neuron to another. Sometimes, the message gets cleaned up too quickly. SSRIs slow that process down so the message has more time to be received. But here's something important. Serotonin is not the whole story. For a long time, depression was popularly explained as a chemical imbalance, usually meaning a lack of serotonin. But recent research shows that this model is overly simplistic. Yes, serotonin plays a role, but depression isn't just about having too little of it. Some people with depression don't have low serotonin levels at all. Others don't respond to serotonin-targeted medications. That's because depression is shaped by many factors: biological, psychological, social, and environmental. So when we talk about serotonin, we need to see it as one piece of a much larger puzzle. An important piece, yes, but not the whole picture. Now let's talk about dopamine, another major player in the science of depression. If serotonin is the stabilizer, dopamine is more like the spark. It's deeply involved in motivation, reward, pleasure, and goal-directed behavior. When dopamine is working well, we feel energized to take action, to chase goals, to enjoy life's little wins. Even something as simple as getting out of bed or texting a friend back can be fueled by dopamine-driven circuits. But when dopamine is low or dysregulated, things feel different. We might feel emotionally flat. We lose motivation. We stop enjoying things we used to love. This is called anhedonia, one of the core symptoms of depression. It's not just sadness, it's the absence of joy, of drive, of that inner spark that normally keeps us going. In brain imaging studies, researchers have observed that people with depression often show reduced activity in the brain's reward system, especially in an area called the ventral striatum, which is highly influenced by dopamine. This means their brain doesn't light up as strongly when anticipating or experiencing positive outcomes. This isn't about being lazy or ungrateful. It's about a neurological shift in how reward is processed. Low dopamine can show up as lack of motivation, difficulty feeling pleasure, emotional numbness, low energy, trouble initiating tasks. And while dopamine is often associated with conditions like Parkinson's or addiction, it's also closely linked to mood disorders. Some types of antidepressants, like bupropion, are designed to increase dopamine and norepinephrine, rather than serotonin. For people whose depression is more connected to low motivation or energy, these medications can sometimes be more helpful. It's worth noting that dopamine levels are sensitive to stress, trauma, and even chronic boredom. So if you've been stuck in a cycle of stress or disconnection, your dopamine system may be running low, not because you're broken, but because your brain is adapting to survive. The good news? Dopamine systems are plastic, meaning they can change and heal. But healing takes time and often support. Now let's talk about norepinephrine, sometimes known as noradrenaline. This neurotransmitter plays a crucial role in how we respond to stress, danger, and pressure. Think of it as the brain's internal alarm system. When something threatens us, whether it's a real threat or just a stressful situation, norepinephrine kicks in. It increases our heart rate, sharpens our focus, and gets us ready to act. It's part of the fight or flight response, helping us react quickly when something feels wrong. But here's where it connects to depression. When norepinephrine is either too low or chronically dysregulated, it can lead to symptoms like difficulty concentrating, physical exhaustion, sleep problems, restlessness or agitation, a feeling of being on edge or easily startled. Some people with depression don't just feel emotionally drained. They feel like their bodies are running on empty, or like they can't calm down even when nothing is happening. That's where norepinephrine might be playing a role. This neurotransmitter also affects our ability to focus and stay alert. In fact, there's a strong connection between norepinephrine and attention deficit symptoms. Many people with depression report brain fog, poor memory, and difficulty staying present, not necessarily because of sadness, but because their brain's alert system is out of balance. Some antidepressants, especially SNRIs, or serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, target both serotonin and norepinephrine. These can be helpful for people whose depression includes not just emotional symptoms, but also physical fatigue and cognitive issues. Again, it's not about just being tired or not trying hard enough. Your brain chemistry can be directly affecting your energy, attention, and stress levels. And that's not something you can snap out of. It's something that needs understanding, care, and often medical support. We're beginning to see a fuller picture now, right? Serotonin helps stabilize mood and emotion. Dopamine fuels motivation and joy. Norepinephrine regulates energy, focus, and stress. And all of these systems are interconnected. So what happens when one or all three get thrown off balance? That's exactly what we'll explore in the next part. So now that we've explored serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine individually, let's zoom out and look at what happens when they're all disrupted together, which is often the case in depression. When these neurotransmitters are out of sync, the brain's communication system begins to misfire. Signals don't travel as they should. The result? Emotional, cognitive, and physical symptoms that are hard to shake and often hard to explain. Here's a breakdown of how the disruption might show up in daily life. Low serotonin might make someone feel emotionally unstable, more sensitive to rejection, or overwhelmed by sadness and anxiety. Low dopamine might strip away the sense of joy or accomplishment, causing apathy, loss of motivation, and a sense that nothing matters. Low norepinephrine might leave a person feeling mentally foggy, physically exhausted, or unable to handle even small stresses. And when all three are imbalanced, a person might feel emotionally down, mentally scattered, physically drained, and deeply disconnected from the world and themselves. Now let's be clear, not everyone with depression has measurable neurotransmitter deficits. The human brain is incredibly complex, and neurotransmitter levels are only one piece of the puzzle. In fact, many researchers today focus not only on the amount of each chemical, but on how receptors respond to them, how signals are transmitted, and how other systems, like inflammation, hormones, and genetics, interact with brain chemistry. Some people have typical levels of serotonin or dopamine, but their brains don't use them effectively. Others may have imbalances caused by trauma, stress, illness, or even diet and sleep disruptions. It's also why antidepressants don't work the same for everyone. Some people respond well to SSRIs that boost serotonin. Others need medications that target dopamine or norepinephrine, or even combinations. And some people benefit more from therapy, lifestyle changes, or alternative treatments that work beyond the neurotransmitter model. The key takeaway? Depression isn't caused by a single chemical deficiency. It's often the result of multiple brain systems struggling to communicate, adapt, or recover. And understanding that gives us more than just a scientific explanation. It gives us compassion. It helps us say, oh, so it's not just me. My brain is trying to protect me, but it's overwhelmed. That kind of understanding can be a powerful part of healing. So, how exactly do antidepressants help rebalance brain chemistry? Let's clear up one thing right away. Antidepressants are not happy pills. They don't make you feel instantly better. They don't create artificial joy. What they aim to do is help restore function in key neurotransmitter systems, especially serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, so that your brain can better regulate mood, motivation, and energy. Different types of antidepressants target different chemical pathways. Let's walk through the main classes. 1. SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. These are the most commonly prescribed antidepressants. SSRIs work by preventing the reabsorption or reuptake of serotonin in the brain, leaving more of it available in the space between neurons, the synapse. That helps strengthen the message being sent and boosts overall serotonin activity. Common SSRIs: fluoxetine, Prozac, sertraline, Zoloft, escitalopram, Lexapro. They're often used because they tend to have fewer side effects compared to older medications. But again, they're not magic. They typically take 2 to 6 weeks to start working. 2. SNRIs, serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. SNRIs target both serotonin and norepinephrine, making them useful for depression with fatigue, brain fog, or physical symptoms like body aches. These medications can be especially helpful when someone has depression and anxiety, or when serotonin-only treatment hasn't been enough. Common SNRIs: venlafaxine, Effexor, duloxetine, Cymbalta. NDRIs, norepinephrine dopamine reuptake inhibitors. These medications, like bupropion, Wellbutrin, target dopamine and norepinephrine, making them a better fit for people who are dealing with low motivation, emotional numbness, or lack of energy. They don't usually cause the same sexual side effects as SSRIs, and are sometimes used alongside other meds. 4. Tricyclic antidepressants, TCAs, and MAOIs, monoamine oxidase inhibitors. These are older classes of antidepressants. They're still effective for some people, especially in treatment-resistant depression, but they come with more potential side effects and dietary restrictions, so they're not often the first choice. What's important to remember is that finding the right medication is often a process. It's not one size fits all. Some people may need to try several options. Some may benefit from combining medication with therapy, especially approaches like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which can reshape thought patterns that are tangled up with depression. And others might find more relief through non-medication options, which we'll get into soon. One more thing: taking medication is not a weakness. It doesn't mean you're broken. Just like someone might take insulin for diabetes or an inhaler for asthma, medication for depression can support your brain chemistry in a way that allows healing, clarity, and growth. Okay, so far, we've talked a lot about neurotransmitters and how antidepressants can help rebalance them. But medication is just one part of the picture. Here's something powerful: your daily habits, experiences, and environment also shape your brain chemistry. Let's explore how that works. 1. Sleep. Sleep isn't just rest, it's neurochemical repair time. When you sleep, your brain restores serotonin levels, resets dopamine pathways, and calms the norepinephrine system. Chronic sleep deprivation, on the other hand, can seriously disrupt these systems and make depression worse. Even just a few nights of poor sleep can lower serotonin activity and increase emotional reactivity. So getting quality sleep isn't a luxury, it's essential brain maintenance. 2. Nutrition. Your brain needs specific nutrients to build neurotransmitters. Tryptophan, found in foods like turkey, eggs, and nuts, helps produce serotonin. Tyrosine, found in dairy, meat, and seeds, is a building block for dopamine. Omega-3 fatty acids, especially from fish, are linked to improved brain function and mood regulation. And vitamin D, magnesium, and B vitamins all play supportive roles in neurotransmitter production and brain health. Poor nutrition, like low protein intake or high sugar diets, can disrupt neurotransmitter balance. In contrast, balanced, whole food-based diets like the Mediterranean diet have been associated with lower rates of depression. Physical activity exercise increases dopamine and serotonin levels, helps regulate norepinephrine, and even promotes the growth of new neurons in areas like the hippocampus, which is often shrunken in people with chronic depression. Even short walks, dancing, or stretching can have measurable effects on mood. And no, it's not about just exercising the sadness away. It's about supporting the brain's natural ability to heal and communicate. 4. Sunlight and nature exposure to natural light boosts serotonin. It also helps regulate your sleep-wake cycle, which supports dopamine and norepinephrine rhythms. That's why seasonal depression, SAD, is linked to shorter daylight hours. Less sunlight can mean less serotonin activity. Even spending time in green spaces, what researchers call ecotherapy, has been shown to reduce symptoms of depression. Nature can actually calm the stress response and support neurotransmitter balance. Connection and touch. Human connection affects our brain chemistry in profound ways. Physical touch, eye contact, and emotional closeness can increase oxytocin, which works alongside serotonin to create feelings of safety and bonding. Loneliness, on the other hand, can suppress dopamine and increase cortisol, a stress hormone that interferes with mood regulation. Your relationships matter, because they literally change your brain chemistry. 6. Mindfulness and meditation practices like deep breathing, meditation, or even prayer can increase dopamine and serotonin, reduce norepinephrine-driven stress responses, and promote a state of emotional balance. Long-term mindfulness practice has even been shown to increase the density of gray matter in brain regions associated with emotional regulation. Bottom line? Yes, antidepressants can help, but so can lifestyle changes, social support, and intentional self-care. You don't have to fix everything at once. Even small changes, one better meal, one deep breath, one moment in sunlight, can start to shift your chemistry and create space for healing. Now, if you've been following along and thinking, okay, but if my brain chemistry is messed up, does that mean I'm stuck like this forever? Here's the hopeful truth. Your brain can change. That's not just a motivational quote. It's neuroscience. The brain's ability to adapt, reorganize, and form new connections is called neuroplasticity, and it's one of the most powerful concepts in all of mental health recovery. Even if depression has been part of your story for a long time, your brain is not frozen in place. The circuits that regulate mood, motivation, and energy can be rewired through therapy, medication, learning, movement, relationships, and repeated experiences of safety and care. Let's break it down. What is neuroplasticity? Neuroplasticity refers to your brain's natural ability to form new neural pathways, strengthen existing ones, and even shift activity from one region to another in response to experience. This happens when you learn a new skill, you practice a new thought pattern, you experience something emotionally significant, you break an old habit, or even when you start believing in your own ability to heal. For people with depression, this means that recovery isn't just about surviving. It's about building a new mental landscape, one small, brave step at a time. Therapy and plasticity. Talk therapy, especially cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is a classic example of how neuroplasticity can help rewire the brain. By challenging unhelpful thought patterns and practicing healthier coping mechanisms, you're literally teaching your brain new ways to think, feel, and respond. This takes time, but with repetition, those new circuits become stronger than the old ones. Medication and plasticity antidepressants don't just change neurotransmitter levels. Over time, they can promote neurogenesis, the growth of new neurons, especially in the hippocampus, which helps regulate emotion and memory. So the goal isn't just to feel better, it's to create conditions in the brain that support deeper healing. Habits and plasticity. Every time you choose to move your body, reach out to a friend, prepare a nourishing meal, or pause for a moment of mindfulness, you're strengthening pathways of self-compassion, resilience, and emotional regulation. You might not see the change right away, but your brain is keeping score. Every healthy decision, no matter how small, is a vote for healing. Hope and plasticity, and maybe most importantly, hope itself changes the brain. When you believe, just a little, that healing is possible, your brain starts to look for evidence that supports that belief. It begins to notice progress. It becomes more receptive to growth. Hope isn't just an emotion. It's a neural signal that says, keep going. Something good is coming. Here we are, the final part of this journey. And maybe by now, you're seeing depression a little differently. Understanding neurotransmitters doesn't just explain how depression works. It helps us reframe what depression is. Not a failure, not a personality flaw, and definitely not a weakness. It's a condition that reflects real, measurable shifts in the brain's communication system. Why this knowledge matters. Too often, people with depression are told to snap out of it, or just be more positive. But when you understand that depression involves disrupted signaling in systems like serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, those dismissive comments suddenly sound ridiculous. You wouldn't tell someone with a broken leg to run a marathon. So why would you tell someone with disrupted brain chemistry to just think happy thoughts? This knowledge helps us replace shame with compassion. What this means for recovery: when we know depression has biological roots, we can normalize treatment, like therapy and medication, be more patient with ourselves or others who are healing, embrace a multifaceted approach. Medication, nutrition, sleep, movement, connection, and recognize that depression is not the end of the story. It's something we can work with, not something we need to hide. The brain is not broken. It's responding in many cases. Depression isn't the brain failing. It's the brain trying to cope. Low dopamine. Your brain might be protecting you from further disappointment. Overactive norepinephrine. Your brain might be stuck in survival mode after chronic stress. Low serotonin. It might be reacting to prolonged emotional pain. So instead of judging the symptoms, we can ask, what is this trying to tell me? What needs care, rest, or support? Creating a new narrative. When we talk about depression through the lens of neuroscience, we begin to shift the story from I'm weak to my brain is struggling to communicate. I need support, not shame. Healing is possible, even if it takes time. A final message of hope: if you're listening to this and you're in the middle of it, maybe feeling lost, numb, tired, or broken, I want you to remember this. Your brain is not stuck. Your story is not over. With time, support, and the right tools, your brain can learn to feel joy again. You can feel like yourself again, even if you don't remember what that feels like right now. This podcast isn't just about chemistry. It's about connection and knowing that you're not alone in this. So thank you for being here, for learning, for caring. If this episode helped you understand depression a little better, I'd love for you to share it with someone who needs it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and follow us for more mindful conversations about mental health.